Hello, good morning. Good to see you this early on a sunny day in the dark. Yesterday we had a fantastic day learning about different perspectives on the knotweed as a troublemaker, as a pest. And it was a really inspiring day, I think. Very great exchange of ideas and meeting of minds. Today we're going to focus a little bit more on knotweed as a friend, as something that we can do stuff with and that we can enjoy, and maybe later we can find a synthesis between dealing with trouble and turning it into a joy. But first we will start with the last bit of hardcore biology, and a little bit connecting with yesterday's program, understanding a bit more about the plant and where it comes from. And then we'll have presentations about how to work with it. And we end the day with opening a bunch of exhibitions around the biotope. So that will be 4 o'clock, I think. But now, the floor is yours, Jip, with your team. Enjoy your day.
Hi, good morning everyone. It's really good to see some people who came back who were here yesterday and some new faces. I agree with Willem that it was a very great day yesterday. We already learned a lot about this plant, and I'm very excited to celebrate it now and see how we can use it in so many different ways. Yesterday we had a very spectacular exhibition that was here with the scents, the aroma lab that showed their 6 knotweed scents. And this morning we also want to start off with a bit of a creative little show of Raphael, who came here from Germany. And he will also have a presentation later this day. The 2 is in this day. I give you the floor. Nice way to wake up.
I want to play only the flutes now and not talking. And I will talk about my flutes later on after the lunch.
I would love to invite Mas to the stage. The microphone to you as well. Mas is a biology student here in Amsterdam, and he studies the genetic diversity of the knotweed populations in the city. And what I loved about our talk earlier is that you really focus on how you relate to the plant as a researcher. So I'm really excited to hear your story. Give it a big applause.
Thank you. Is this high enough? Can you hear me? Yes, hello. Exciting to be here. Thank you all for listening to me. Certainly yesterday was very constructive and we opened up the discussion and we went really deep some points. Today, I think we're going to be talking more also about the cultural side, so I'm not sure how we'll find a place for my presentation. I think I slot somewhere in between. So today I wanted to talk to you about the ancestry of Knotweed a little bit. But before I can do that, I just want to refresh your mind on what we discussed yesterday already about how it got here in the first place. And I know you all know this, so I'll keep it very brief. The story goes that 150 years ago, this guy from France, from Seawall, was staying in this area of the world, the east of Asia. And of course you have Japan there, you have South Korea, you got Russia, and then to the right you got the island Sakhalin, which is important to know. And in the year 1850 he was there in Japan, and he decided it was a good idea to bring this plant, Japanese knotweed, that was native over there, to his nursery, his herbarium in Leiden. So that's how it got here, and then in his pension, I think Norbert discussed this, he had this idea that he could sell these plants all over the place, the horticulturists and people who wanted them in the garden. This is how many living in 150 years we got a problem a little bit on the plants. Note the hilarious difference in depiction. This is a depiction of our colonial ancestors, and he looks a lot less heroic on the Japanese. But we also saw that the story was a little bit more complicated, that actually 20 years after France introduced them to Europe, there was another person who introduced a second species, which is the Sakhalinian knotweed, or giant knotweed, which was from the island of Sakhalin I just told you about. So this got introduced probably via St. Petersburg to England, where pretty much the same story happened. People bought these, put them in their gardens, it exploded. 150 years, it's all over the place. And it gets really a messy story when we consider that these two different species are actually mating with each other to create a hybrid individual. And this can happen multiple times over, creating different kinds of hybrids, even with different amounts of DNA, different combinations. So I'm not sure why, but we group these all together under one name. This is considered its own species, the Bohemian knotweed, whose name is great because it describes its unwillingness to fit into a box, I think. This was only seen in 1980, 110 years later, but this is almost certainly just a lack of understanding and not recognizing that it has been present, actually. So this is just what I wanted to refresh, that we're not talking about a single species, we're talking about a complex, really. If I can point out a couple of things more, is that the Japanese knotweed, the real Japanese purebred, that supposedly was introduced by France, is actually, the males are sterile, they cannot produce viable seed or sloppy seed, but the females can mate, and they mate with the males of Sakhalin. So, okay, then I could tell you, of course, what we discussed yesterday, that knotweeds are very competitive and that they display allelopathy, so they concentrate chemicals in their leaves, which does change the soil composition when they decompose, inhibiting the germination of other plants. There's all kinds of things happening that this plant does that we consider to be negative, and it has vigorous growth. And I could also go into that the hybrids that they create show even more vigorous growth and pose even bigger problems. But really, I would prefer to just walk with you through the relationships that we found when we analyzed these plants, and show you the structure of the population of Amsterdam, because it is a good story. And I think these plants can learn us something if we just look with a little bit of care and attention. So before I show you the results, I'd like you to show you the path that it took to get there, because it's important to see how much love we have to put into this research. This goes to the next slide. This map we saw yesterday was important. It was carefully and meticulously and generously crafted by Velthoven. I'm not sure if she's here today, but she and her colleagues who work for the municipality of Amsterdam, they put this together, took a lot of work. really mapping every individual of Knotweed in Amsterdam and with a lot of data points. So what we did is we went to around 80 of the individuals on this map here, and we sat down on our knees, and we took a little tweezer and a little scissor, and we collected one leaf of each of these plants. And my fellow students, they wanted to dig it out and look at the roots as well, but I was more comfortable just taking a single leaf, and even though we know that they can really take a lot, I still felt let's disturb the plant as little as possible. So I think a leaf, it can lose one leaf. We put 80 of these leaves from 80 different plants into little tubes, put them on ice, brought them back to the lab, where we wanted to isolate the DNA, because that's really how we can discover its relationships. So we put them in liquid nitrogen, we froze them really cold, so they're so brittle that they shatter like glass if you shake them up. We added a bunch of chemicals, there's protocols for all this. It's not so interesting to discuss how exactly, which chemicals you add. But the point is we got the DNA out of the leaves by using laboratory methods. And now I want to tell you a little bit about this DNA that we collected, because the cells of all plants contain a certain organelle called a chloroplast, or groene bladkorrel. These are the places where photosynthesis occurs. And the theory goes that long ago this organelle was its own free living organism that over many instances was swallowed by this other bigger cell. And eventually, instead of being digested, it was contained inside the cell and managed to coexist. Okay, and over many instances of this happening, not being digested, really accidentally ending up in the cell almost, these two separate organisms, one existing inside the other, managed to benefit from each other, even becoming dependent on each other, and timing their divisions together so that their daughter cells could benefit from this relationship from birth on, and not needing to acquire it. And this idea, okay, of this relationship was so important that 1 billion years later, we don't know exactly how long, all plants rely on this relationship. And this chloroplast that is still present contains its own DNA, because from the story it was once its own organism. And this DNA from the chloroplast, okay, this is the DNA that we looked at. And I don't want you to understand exactly what it means, why we looked at this DNA, but it could be a good idea in some instances when you're analyzing the relationships to use the chloroplast rather than the nucleus. I just wanted to have you keep it in mind that we're looking at the chloroplast DNA. And similar to as humans, we have mitochondria. These chloroplasts are passed down from mother to child. Okay, just to keep in mind. So I'm not going to go over all the exact ways that we then analyze this DNA, or where we actually manipulated the DNA, but we used a magnificent technique called PCR, polymerase chain reaction. And if you don't know how it works, you have to look it up because it's very amazing. But basically, we added a bunch of chemicals and some stabilizers and the building blocks for DNA. We put this into an artificial cell, and we heated it up over multiple cycles, and we ended up with about 1 billion times more DNA than we started with in a matter of an hour. So it's really impressive. And then we verified it using gel electrophoresis, which is a complicated word. I won't go into that right now. And luckily, we were successful. We had this tiny amount of DNA. Now we have a lot of it, and we sent this to a lab, and they analyzed it for €3 a sample. They gave us the whole secret. It looks like this. So now it's getting interesting, I would say. This seems like a lot, but let me just set your bearings here. These are the 40 individuals. We started with 80, around 40 were successful. These are the 40 individual plants, okay? These grow in Amsterdam. And for instance, that A, I think up top means Amstelpark. This is an individual plant. All 40 of them like this, and then their genetic code runs like this, horizontal. You can see it's very similar. All of these plants have exactly the same DNA here. But there are some systemic differences. These 5 contain a C at this position rather than a T. Okay? And what that means, I don't know exactly, but you might say it's unlikely that these 5 individuals that were present in Amsterdam all separately evolved a C rather than a T. It's more likely that they share a history of some sort, that they share a common mother, because we're talking about maternally inherited DNA, some time ago. And these 5 might be more closely related to each other than to these others. Well, we see another event over here. These dots mean that this DNA is just after this G comes to C, but with that individual, it actually contains a tata insert, or tatitata. I'm not sure what all this means, but let's keep it in mind. I did not, with my hands and my eyes, analyze this. There's algorithms that calculate the least amount of evolutionary mutations that had to occur in order to create the data that we see here. So really this is a piece of the puzzle. This is a lot longer, but I couldn't fit it all onto here. So I ran this into an algorithm, and it gave to me the path that likely happened to create these mutations. And this looks like a tree, like a history, like how do you say, like a familiebaum. And that's over here. I had to cut it up into little parts because it didn't fit onto one slide. But this is really the result of our research. And it shows you right on the left here all of our samples. You can see this one was from the Jordaan, Centrum, the Amstelpark, Wageningen, Vondelpark. These are our individuals. And you can see that little cluster of 5. That's its own kind of cluster, closely related to the others, but it forms its own separate cluster. These are likely the 5 seed mutations we just saw. Okay, but probably further on in the DNA there were similar mutations with only these 5. So it didn't rely only on the seed mutation. Then this right here actually is the same branch, we call it. This fits on top of there. So really these are all very similar. And you can see I added some other samples from the United States database. They fit exactly on the same branch. They share the same DNA, which means that, as we know from the literature, of course, the population from Europe got transported to America as well. But what's interesting is this is not only written in the literature, this is written in the leaves of the plants themselves. You can look at this. Let's continue all the way at the bottom of this one branch containing all our individuals and the ones from the United States. There's one individual from Asia, from South Korea. So what this means likely is that all of our individuals and the ones from the United States share a common mother with this one individual from South Korea. And probably this is the plant, this mother was the plant that France brought back to the Netherlands. And you might say South Korea, I thought it's Japanese knotweed. And you would be right. Unfortunately, I just did not include enough samples from Japan. It's very likely that it's still from Japan. So that's a little mistake on my part. There's some other things I'd like to point out is that this is one branch further away. So these two ones on the left and in the middle are one branch. Then that one on the right is further removed. That's the population in Asia. You can see a lot more structure over there. You can see little subclusters forming, and this indicates that there's a high diversity, high genetic diversity in the native regions, as opposed to all the individuals that are present here and in the United States. They're very similar to each other, so there's low genetic diversity. One of the most interesting things that we found is that located yet further away from this Japanese knotweed population in Asia, all the way over here, branch back further still, is one sample from Amstelpark, which seems totally far removed from the rest of the population in Asia and in here. It's clustered together with a Fallopia sakhalinensis from South Korea and Fallopia sakhalinensis from the USA and no more from the USA. Also Japonica, I'm pretty sure that's just a mislabel in the database. So certainly, almost certainly, this is an individual with a sakhalinensis chloroplast DNA. It was labeled on the Amsterdam database as Japonica, so we need to keep in mind that we're dealing with a lot of mislabeling here. It's interesting that this structure can be seen in the leaves. I'm not sure how much time do I have left still? I'm okay? I wanted to tell you a couple more things, but really I just want to point out how amazing it is that somehow this tiny little organelle, this cell within a cell, was passed down across many generations from mother to daughter and son, but then from daughter to their grandchildren. And so made its way across the Pacific and into our minds. And now we're allowed to be in the presence of these green jewels. Something that's so small that were you to hold it, you would lose it with the first sigh you breathe. This has been preserved by and has been taken care of by these plants. And when we gaze into this crystal ball, if you were, we can see roots and history and phylogeny. I just think that's so amazing. I won't go over this because I don't think it's very important right now. Really, that's pretty much what I wanted to tell you. And as I stand between this knotweed and a warm ray, this is my face. I just want to return to myself, and I want to leave the knotweeds for whoever they want to be. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Jans. Bas, I think that was really, really cool and a perfect transition from the first day to the second day. Of course, I'll give room for questions. I think it's really nice that you're doing your research and then you don't really take a stance. So yesterday there was maybe a little bit more opinions, and you perform your research, and you may have opinions, but as a researcher, you're just doing the research and sharing the knowledge. So I think that's really cool. Are there questions? Would love to give
Ik kan
some
een
room.
vraag in het Nederlands stellen. Waren het zichtbare verschillende vegetaties? Want u hebt het nu over moleculair niveau, dat u verschillen ziet, maar zijn er daar vegetaties bij die je in het veld op zich kan herkennen om te zeggen, kijk, dat is blijkbaar een andere vegetatie dan die, of is dat niet te herkennen?
Now that is well, should I answer in English?
Yeah.
Because the question was if there's morphological differences as well that you could see, as well as the molecular differences. But the idea is that yes, you can identify these morphologically by looking at the shape of the leaf, looking at the hairs under the veins. For us personally, that was very difficult to do, and even for professionals, they often mislabel it, and especially with this Bohemian, where they hybridize, all these traits can be mixed up in different ways. So, if you want my opinion, I think morphological identification is not reliable at all. But there are some people that claim that they're able to do it. I'd like to believe them. Yeah.
Mag ik ook in Nederlands?
Yeah.
Op ons tuinhuiscomplex is al deze Japanse al ontdekt. Maar hij wordt erg verward met de Canadese konoeien. Die lijkt heel sterk op haar. En toen kwamen we pas achter goed met een app uit te zoeken. En toen bleek het dus de Japanse vondsten deze planten zijn. Dus ineens hebben we op allerlei plekken ontdekt dat deze soort er zit.
Ja, ik ben zelf niet bekend met de Canadezen.
Nee, dat is
Maar ik geloof dat Wageningen zag ook inderdaad, dat was in 1980. werd die hybride ontdekt.
Ja.
En dat laat wel zien dat toen hadden we moleculaire technieken,
Ja.
dus toen kwamen we erachter dat die er altijd al was.
Ja.
Maar aan de hand van de ogen kan je niet goed zien dat het met een ingewikkeld complex te maken heeft.
Normaal verwarmen kan het deze formule
Ja.
zo niet mogen, omdat de knop in de winter bovengrond totaal.
Oh, dat doe je niet.
Nee, ook de stengels in de winter bij de duizendknop zijn enkel cellulose,
Ja.
rood.
Ja, ja.
Alle levende materiaal zit onder de knop. Kan het deze vermoeien? Dat zijn gewoon takjes zonder bladeren die je kan breken. Dus normaal zou je heel makkelijk ook in de winter dat onderscheiden op de normaal.
Ja, maar we hebben nu ook de zomer op de winter.
Volkstuintjes zijn in.
Dan moet je toch vrij makkelijk het blad wel, dan moet je stengels. Dan de stengels van deze vermoeien en mooi vol. Dat zijn van deze altijd.
I think the recommendation is to invite an expert.
Ja, or do molecular analysis.
Yeah.
You don't have
I
to
must say that these apps are very helpful. And, can imagine that having someone like expert and as a visitor would be more helpful to decide how you want to deal with it.
I see one more question from.
Yeah, did you publish your research? Are you going to find it somewhere?
We were not published because we are bachelor students in research, so I'm not sure if we ever will write a more serious paper. So I could send you some links. I could send you, for instance, the tree. I could send you the data if you want. So we should talk afterwards. Yeah.
How are you going to continue? What are you up to?
So this was part of my studies. I did a lot of it myself with two other students. We came up with a lot of it, but we were helped by a large part by professors. This was already a year ago, so this project is now behind us. And I was asked by Willem to speak, so I got back into it. And I feel a lot of excitement about this whole subject, but for me, I'm not going back to the lab. I'm not going to continue, I think, my work personally in Knotweed, but I'd like to stay on the sidelines and stay involved in the scene, because it's interesting. Yeah, and if ever I can be a part of a project, I'd like to take on a coordinating role, but I wouldn't myself go back into the lab. No.
Can I ask you, just you were mentioning that in Japan there is a wider genetic diversity found in a plant. Like, what does that mean from the ecological point of view? Like,
that's a very good question, and how we can describe the events that happen, we call it a founder event. So from a population in a region where it's been grown for a long time, called the native region, there have been many different niches explored. There's tiny variations. These all mean something. In the native region, there's pressure on certain genes that cannot evolve in a different way because the pathogen will, for instance, invade. There's all kinds of pressures and tensions on this organism. When it gets transferred into a new environment like Europe, suddenly a lot of these pressures don't exist, and it's much more competitive than the rest. So this is what's called a founder event. It's allowed to really it's called genetic drift. It can change its genetics without pressures acting on it. So this would lead you to believe, okay, now it's got really resources to diversify. I would expect the population to increase in diversity. This is sometimes what you encounter. But at the same time, though, the genetic pool is very limited because there's really only asexual reproduction happening, and the individuals with which it can sexually reproduce are very limited. So the amount of genes that can be combined is limited, and this is called excessive inbreeding, which is an interesting term, and this dramatically reduces genetic diversity. So I assume that this is what's happening with knotweed, is there's a lot of inbreeding which causes the genetic diversity to be very low. However, in general, the reasons for genetic diversity are poorly understood. So I wouldn't tell you that that's exactly what's going on, but these are two factors to take into account. But it's a very good question. Yeah. I think that was it, right? Yeah.
One thing I would like to note on the picture that I really love is the sign, really.
Yeah.
The bottom of the picture, which has been a part of the program at Biomedic for a while. So we have these plant signs, and also for Japanese knotweed that are spread throughout Amsterdam. And it's also a part, again, of this festival, which we may go into later today. But for now, I would love to introduce Edwin Keijsers to the stage. Edwin is a researcher at Wageningen University, and you're involved in bio-based research, bio-based materials. So in this talk, you will explore how knotweed can be used as a biomaterial, maybe replace non-renewable materials. And we have a little stand over there on the stage, which you can check out during the break, which have a couple of samples that you made. Really excited for your talk. We'll give you a big applause.
It's great to be here. It's great to be between people who really touch plants, who look at them, we do something with it. I'm from Wageningen University and research. From the research part, which means that I have to earn money by doing projects. And that means that normally we look at large industries to pay our research. So a lot of times the small things that are the nicest I can't do because they can't pay me enough. I have to go for the large ideas. One of the ideas we had, and it was funded by the European Community, is see if we can look at circular cities. And a circular city would keep their biomass or their resources or even their stones and their metal inside their city and reuse it over and over again. And we were looking at, would that be a great idea? And we're looking at it from the perspective of the city itself. So the people in the city hall can decide what do we do with materials, where do we go, why do we do that. On an economical perspective, of course, they need to have the money to do some experiments or to do something with the plant, but also social and environmental. And if they say, okay, but some part of my city could use some help, then they can put more money there and then they can do some projects. And they don't really care whether the projects are ending up into something that is really valuable. It's okay if people are working on it. In that process, we came up with the idea of taking Japanese knotweed as a resource for 3D printing. And I will tell a little bit about the project, and then I will show at the end, and that may be the most interesting, how we came from Japanese knotweed into 3D printing. I'm Edwin Keijsers. I'm an engineer, which means that I studied chemical engineering in Eindhoven and afterwards in Twente. And I learned there how to calculate from small experiments on the lab how the factory will look like and how the bigger machines should look like. And my playground is that over there. You can see it. It's a lot, and it's a lot of washing, and it's a lot of refining, and it's a lot of extrusion, and we make plastics, and we make all kind of materials, also paper and all kind of things, and on a somewhat larger scale. So normally 50 kilograms or 100 kilograms is how we do our experiments. I work on the circular economy, on biorefineries, in getting a plant, putting it in all the different parts and see, okay, what can we do with the juice, what can we do with the fiber, what can we do with the starch, and mainly on fiber extraction. And luckily, all over the world. So I've been to the Philippines to look at coconuts, I've been to Indonesia to look at kapok, I've been to India to look at rice straw and all kinds of residues. And somehow you find, okay, there's something that I know now. If I have this fiber, then I go there. If I have this fiber, then I go there in application. And we work for the fiber industry, but the fiber industry in the Netherlands is not that big. We have paper industry, which is big, but actually really poor. So they're earning just enough to keep up, but they have little money to do research. We don't really have a textile industry that's making the fiber itself. We have some people who make clothes, but not in the same way. We have some building materials, and also in there you have fibres. So we make boards for housing, we have Trespa for example, and we do some work for them. But most of this on fibres is small and is still in the generating the ideas and not so much in already having a large income. What I'm going to tell about is a little bit about circular economy, circular cities, then bio-waste, and this is part of bio-waste because it's green and you take it out. Then I'll show you the Knotweed to 3D printing. The middle one is made from some Knotweed and PLA. And I show you the pictures of the practical work and explain a little bit. The circular economy is described everywhere. And one of the nicest things is the lot of balancing. And as you can see there, it's a lot of balancing, that's Dutch, but it's actually so famous in Europe that it's just called like that, a lot of balancing. And it's also Atlancing, and it says reduce, reuse, recycling, energy integrating landfill, and you can have more R's, etc. And one of my main problem is if a leaf falls off a tree, how am I going to reuse that? What was the first purpose of the tree? And am I gluing the leaf back on? So how am I going to do that? So it's not completely fitting, but it's getting better and better. In recycling, just getting nutrients back to the ground so you can grow more, so you can improve your green spaces, you can get greener grass, that's a good idea. The MacArthur diagram that you see over there makes clear this distinction between biomass and materials. And materials is everything like stones that are not growing, that will not be regenerated. And biomass is everything that you can regrow. And if we get away from oil, then this one will diminish slowly or will stay the same. And this one has to take over. But it's not completely true. If you grow a tree and you make wood out of there, you have a beam or a table, then they say it's over here and you have to mill it down, it make some paper or do something with it. But in fact, it just goes into a housing and they reuse the beam and they do it a little bit in there. So some of the materials will actually put in there. If I make chemicals from the plant, then you're making plastics, then you're again in the blue circle. The idea that we had in this project was, can we take the plant, harvest it, put it for some time in this material loop, so reuse it several times, and then make sure that you can still put it back in the ground and grow new plants. The CityLoops thing is a big European city where we look at circularity, both for bio-waste and for construction waste. And it's a little bit the same. So you can look, if I have a road, a brick, I take it away, put something down there again, can we use the same stones and how do we do that? And the same is, if you have bio-waste from food or from Knotweed, can we reuse it and regrow it? Why did we choose bio-waste? Because it's a big problem. And of course we have some law now that if you collect bio-waste in European, it wasn't mandatory, but now you have. Next year everybody has to separate bio-waste from normal waste. I don't know whether we're going to do it in Amsterdam, but in the smaller cities we already do it. And what most people do is either compost it, so make a new ground, or burn it, some part, or landfill. And we said, no, let's go a little bit higher. Let's do something more with it so we can actually introduce it. The CityLoops goal was to better understand how local governments can best promote the transition to a circular economy in their city. So it is about one city who's doing that. And that's not the same for every city. We're doing it in the Netherlands, in Apeldoorn, that's not that big. We're also looking, for example, in Finland, Mikkeli. That's a small city, but it's 200 kilometers wide. So that's a completely different thing to do there. And also, if you look at the different cities, the climate is different, all kind of plants are different, everything is different. we did the demonstrations, so we did some work, but also we were helped by other people. And first of all, we need an evaluation framework. And that tells us we chose to make 3D plastic from it. Is that a good idea or not? Is it better for the environment? Is it better for the people? Will it help in circularity or will it just reduce circularity? It took a lot of time there. We try to make maps of where the biomass and the stones are going in a city. That's not as easy as you think. Because, for example, Albert Heijn is not going to tell us how much food they buy and how much they're selling. So you don't know where it's going. And if somebody buys the food, then where does he leave it? Is it going in the waste? Is he going to put it in his garden? But the same is for somebody who's cutting down a tree. Where's the wood going? And you want to make it visible in a map. How does that work? Then we tried different stakeholder engagement processes, which means more or less we tried to do it completely by the government. We tried to do it with people locally. We tried to involve industry and said, okay, what's the best system to work like this? And then one that I never heard of before is public procurement, aanbesteding. And most of the cities claim that they give direction to what's happening in the city by procurement. By telling, okay, I have grass, can you mow it for me? And I can tell you that you're not only allowed to mow it for me, you have to make something bio-based of it. And then people write and say, okay, I want to do it, and they select. So by making this circular, the public procurement, you can give direction to what's happening to your bio-waste. These are the cities. Wageningen, completely in the top, Mechelen, Seville, Porto. And one of the things I never thought about, because I don't normally think so much about these kind of things. If you have bio-waste in your kitchen, we collect it once every 2 weeks, that's okay. In Mechelen, well, once every month is okay. In Seville, well, you better come in 2 days because the flies, etc. are already flying over. So it looks like the same system, but it's not. In Mechelen, most people have a compost heap in their garden. It's such agricultural area that there are only a few people that have problems there. But in looking at bio-waste, for example, the problems of Mechelen and Seville are the same. They put their things in a plastic bag, and you can't put a plastic bag in your biogas digester. So they're both working on getting paper bags in there instead of plastic bags. And apparently that's really difficult because they worked on it for 4 years and still people are putting it in plastic bags. Even if you give them bags, or even in Italy they showed how you can fold it from your newspaper bag, and still they're doing it in a different way. I thought at the beginning that Portugal and Seville would be a little bit behind. That's not, I don't know why, but because they're doing, they still have landfill, so it's that, okay, they start composting, they lag behind, and in Mechelen and Apeldoorn we were farther, we were looking at paper making and all kinds of things that they do. But in reality, the Porto community, everybody wants to join in, they're doing something together, they make their own gardens, etc. In Apeldoorn, it's a city telling, okay, this is what we do, and citizens are difficult. Why do you talk with them? That's not what you want. And then we had some cities that like to copy and look with us on what we're doing. This is the whole group. All kind of cities, all kind of researchers from all kind of institutes. I mean, this was in Denmark. In Apeldoorn, we decided after 1.5 years what we were going to do, and we came up with 4 processes. The first one is making bokashi from leaves. Bokashi is a kind of composting system, meaning it's completely different, but like you compost it, you put it in a bokashi heap. And they do it in Apeldoorn already some years, and they put it back in the streets. So it's in the winter when the leaves are falling off, people are getting on their bikes, they fall because it's too wet. They have to remove the leaves. The leaves are putting on a heap, and in 3 months you can put them back on the grass and you can grow your grass again. Main complaint, it smells a little bit if you put it on the grass. It's for 3 or 4 days, but it smells like a forest, and nobody wants to live in a forest. We want to have normal smell in the city. We looked at biochar from pruning. Biochar is used, for example, in getting medicines out of water, in the wastewater treatment, but you can also put it in the ground and then it stays there a little bit longer. And we looked there. Then what I'm going to show, 3D print filaments from knotweed. And the last one, paper from grass. And why did I select paper from grass? First of all, I know a lot about it. But also, Apeldoorn is near to the paper industry, and they have a museum that has the oldest working paper mill in the Netherlands. So I was able to make some paper on the old machine, and they're really proud of their paper industry, so it's nice to do that also in their community. Then why not knotweed? And we have the same kind of map, only this is in years, so there's not so much variation there for Apeldoorn. It's a great resource because you have selective collection. And it has almost only knotweed in there, not a lot of other plants. So if you start to work with it, you know, okay, I have this plant. And it's moved somewhere, and now it's destructed. Most of the time, and we say, okay, let's give it to us, and we can make something from it. And that's the only green plant that they have as a waste that's so selectively collected and so clean. It has long fibers, and there are not a lot of plants that have long fibers. How do you know it has long fibers? Because it grows in 1 year and stands like that. And that's only possible because it has a structure with long fibers on the side. Hemp has that kind of fibers, flax has that kind of fiber, but most of the others don't in the Netherlands. If you compare it to grass, which you know is falling after half a meter, but that's not that strong, and other miscanthus, all kinds of those plants, they have smaller fibers. This one has a long one and you want to use them. And if you're making composite materials from a plastic and a fiber, or from a cellulose, other sort of plastic with a fiber, and in our case, a sugar type of fiber, PLA, then this long fiber helps in giving you strength, because they're connecting the polymers together and you get a little bit better properties. So what we did is we tested most of the bio-waste, make plastics out of there, in composite material with fibers, and said which is the best one, and knotweed was okay. That was good enough to say, okay, let's do something there. If they run out of knotweed, they could actually go to another type of resource. So if they make this industry, they could say, well, now we're getting rid of all the knotweed, let's move into wood, or let's move into grass. That's possible, but as an example of it, we started with knotweed. Then we need the circle. We have the public spaces where they grow. Then you have to collect it. In this case, you have almost no cleaning, so that's okay. Then we have, and I'll come back, making 3D things. Goes to the consumer and reuse it, can actually also grind it back and make a new 3D printed thing. Some will lose anyway. Always something is lost and you never find it back. But if we use it with PLA and fibers, we could actually do an anaerobic digestion, get some biogas, or we could do composting and get some nutrients back, and finally we can regrow public spaces. So in that way it's a circle. There's one thing that I've put there but nobody notices. There's something coming from over in the top that's not in the circle. That at the moment is PLA. So the sugar-based plastic cannot be made on a small scale in Apeldoorn yet, so we have to get it from somewhere else. And currently there are a limited amount of factories making PLA, so you really have to hunt to get it in a way. But it's an example, you could make something out. Why did I choose 3D printing? Because the Coda Museum in Apeldoorn has an experience lab, market space, where they have a lot of 3D printers. And they have exhibitions about it, so it really connects again to Apeldoorn. I could also have done injection molding, and then I would make baskets and boxes, etc. But there was no clear connection. The only thing that I would have liked, but I didn't choose for that one in the end, is the Apeldoorn has boxes in their kitchen where they put their fruit residues and their vegetable residues, and 20% of that contains hemp. And there's actually hemp being grown in the Netherlands and putting in there, so we could replace it with this. Problem is, and that's for most of the materials that we have, the idea came from the hemp grower. So I can go to him and say, okay, let's put in knotweed, but his business is growing hemp. And that's the same for the fibres who make with miscanthus and some other companies. Normally they started with the plant that they grow. So you would really be a competitor if you start this. In the end, we will do that, but it's okay. Harvest the knotweed, that's what we did. Produce filament, produce objects. We looked at the market space. There are some people from Amsterdam who can just come there and play around with it. We're talking with a repair cafe, so they can make parts there from this material. And what I also like to have is make outside furniture. I don't know whether you've seen it, but there's the bench in Artis made from elephant poop. That you could also do with this one, and actually the elephant poop, I was the one milling it this time. So that's something connection that you could do. Then you can recycle it, and because it's your own material, you can take it and reuse it again. And you can put decomposed, regenerative materials in house. How do you do it? You need the fiber optimization, getting it out of there and keeping it as long as possible. Then you have to clean it a little bit, extract it, dry it. You need to compound it, mix it with your PLA plastic. And then you have to make these long strings, and then finally you end up with 3D print. Simple, but takes a lot of time. I'll show you. This is in Apeldoorn. This is where they collect all their materials. You can see a little bit of grass in the back. It's not that much of storage that they have. And this is what they gave me, some bags of Japanese knotweed. My colleague standing there showing, okay, it's a rather long version that we had. It's longer than we expected. Actually, most of the times they are. So this is how long it can be, in our case. And then we start cutting it. And this is a simple moving belt with a knife that goes like this, and you get it a little bit smaller. We have this because we are an agricultural university and we use these kind of machinery a lot. So you can see that there's still some leaves in there. We grind it all together. And then you have to clean it. And we cleaned it by using water. And then normally most of the sand, that's the main problem in here, that there's some sand in there, that goes to the bottom, you take the top out and you have already a little bit clean material. We also want to clean it because if there's metal in there, for example, we would destroy our machines. So you could also just use magnets. We do it in this way. Then we take a disc refiner. That's a machine that we have that's normal in the paper industry that grinds, like an old bread mill, the material. And because it's grinding and not cutting, it keeps your fibers long. And you put it in one there, comes out at the end, you collect it because it's moving with a little bit of water, and do it again and again, and then you say, okay, now it's enough. For me now, this is the quality that I want. But of course you have this soup-like material, and we need it to be dry because mixing with plastic needs to be dry. So we have some filter bags and we use the hand-on equipment. We have a nicer one. We choose this one. And get rid of some of the water. And then we dry it on a drying base that we have. And then you can see we have clumps of material. One of the main problems if you dry fibers, you get clumps. So we took a hammer mill, this size about, and destroyed all the clumps. So they were a little bit finer, so we can add it to the plastic. This is our compounding machine, extruder. You mix on one side the powder that you just saw, on the other one the pellets of plastic. Heat it up, mix it, and then cool it down. You cool it down with water in this machine, and you get those kind of pellets, brown things. Very normal in plastic industry now together with fibers. Because they are wet, we have to dry them again. We put the pellets in this smaller extruder. There comes this line out of there. You have to melt. It's melted, so it comes out. You have to get the temperature down. So we do it in a water bath. Finally, you can roll it up, like you have it laying there. You get this roll of filament. This is still a little bit wet, so we dry it for the third time. You can see there's a lot of energy going in this idea. And then finally, you can put it in the normal 3D printing machines and make something out of it. And I chose to make a hedgehog out of there. And what you see here, the three ones that I also have laying there. One that is high quality PLA with a very small nozzle, so very high definition material. Then we have green PLA with a bigger nozzle. And the same nozzle I use in here where the Japanese knotweed is, because the particles are still a little bit big, I put them through a little bit longer nozzle. It's specific material. If you feel it, it's a little bit light, so you can make it a little bit more dense still. And it's a little bit brittle. That's most of the things that you have with fibers in there are really strong, but brittle. And so you have to get an idea of where can you use it. For example, in the repair cafe, you really have to choose where I'm putting in something with fibers or something without, because it will not be the same. We also make test bars, because we like making test bars, and we actually check how strong it was and compare it with other things. And now we're working to get everybody joining in to make something from it. That's not as easy because they're really used to using high quality plastic, and now they get something else, and they have to find new ideas. Okay, how am I going to make this type of materials? Oh, thank you.
Are there any questions? Thank you very much.
And you mentioned that Apeldoorn people have boxes in their kitchen, and they have hemp growing in it.
No, sorry, I was too quick. They have plastic boxes that is used to separate the kitchen bio-waste from the garden bio-waste. And those boxes are made from plastic, but also 20% of hemp. And the people selling the box are also growing hemp, so they're not really interested in changing to Japanese knotweed right now. If they really ask for it, then I guess somebody will do it. Nobody knows. So I saw the plastic boxes, said, okay, we can put fibers in there, that's an option. And then finally I found out, okay, there's also hemp in there, so that's a rather easy option even. But most households use them, but are not aware that they actually make using hemp material in there as well.
Amsterdam heeft heel veel Japanse duizendknopstruiken. En je zit dus echt met een probleem.
Ja.
Je kunt je contact maken met de gemeente om te vragen of het kan worden voor Amsterdam.
Yes. We will contact the other cities, and we have with Wageningen a close contact with Amsterdam in the AMS industry.
Yeah.
What Apeldoorn is doing is they're trying to destroy it, but they don't have enough money to destroy everything. So that's why they're also cutting it down.
Yeah.
And that's also, they say, okay, but we want to get rid of it. Yeah, but you are not really getting rid of it, so it will be there all the time, unless you decide for something else. And also even Apeldoorn is of course next to some highway. In the highway they just keep it growing and just harvest it every year. So also there it will replenish all the time. Yeah.
Even opletten, ja, een opmerking bij mevrouw hier, even opletten. Door het loop van de duizendklok te gaan weghalen, ga je nooit bestrijden.
Nee.
Nee. Dus ik denk dat een heel interessant verhaal is.
Ja.
Super, maar dat staat los van alle bestrijden van buiten. Nee, niemand maken.
Alles wat biologisch afbreekbaar, alles komt biologisch. Plastic komt wetenschap. Dat is een paar jaar geleden hebben ze het helemaal over. Dus je kunt niks. Oké.
Ja.
Dank u.
Moeten we het als vijand zien of inderdaad als biobased materiaal voor nieuwe grondstoffen?
Kunt u nog je vragen?
Ik zeg, moeten we het als vijand zien of moeten we het zien als een nieuwe grondstof die we kunnen gebruiken om straks onze biobased huizen te bouwen? Maar mijn vraag is eigenlijk, olifantengras, miskanten, zou je dat ook kunnen gebruiken?
Miscanthus is used for these kind of purposes. It doesn't have the long fiber, so it's not as good in. And then you choose to something that you're actually growing and having to put money in to grow it for something that you want to get rid of. So if I was able to choose, then I would choose this one.
Maar jij ziet het ook niet als vijand, zeg maar.
Now, people explain to me that they want to get rid of it, but then I see the practice is not getting rid of it, so then you can just as well do something of it. And they bring it together on one heap, so okay, either burn or use it.
Precies. Ik vind het heel verwarrend, zeker van in het begin, van dat je biobased material gebruikt om plastic te gaan maken. Wat is het, ik begreep dat dit more brittle is, dit plastic. Is het beter te recyclen of is het makkelijker afbreekbaar achteraf? Is er een voordeel van dit soort plastic op klassiek?
We combine the fibers with a type of plastic that is bio-based as well. And that can be, in good composting conditions, actually be destroyed again. So industrial composting, it will get rid of it. The reason why you put fibers in plastic is because you have less bending. So if you want to make a beam where you can stand on, then with normal plastics it's not working because it will just go like this. And if you have a fiber in there, then it gets stronger. Most of the garden fences that you have that are made from plastic, you have them in shops, they have fibers in there because then it can stand up for a little bit stronger. So that's why you put fibers in there. It's the same why you use glass fibers in all kind of applications. You need some strength in there. We're focusing at making something that can go back to nature. Instead of that it's going to last for 100 or 200 years. On environmental scale, I'm not sure. Maybe if you could actually build a house that would stand for 400 or 500 years, it would also be a great idea.
Yeah.
But that's something else we have to decide.
Werk je ook met kunstenaars samen om iets 3D-erags te printen, waardoor het meer zichtbaar is, het verhaal?
No, we didn't yet. We were thinking about people that could make something kind of it. What I haven't told about you is that if you ask somebody how much material are you using for 3D printing, well, 1 kilogram per year, 2 kilograms per year. So that's why injection molding is more interesting, because you can actually get a volume and you can do something. The Coda Museum didn't use any material last year because they still have some leftovers from the year before. So selling it is difficult. We made some larger objects, even in Wageningen and Ede. We're making new art pieces that are this high around trees. There, at least you get some kilograms in there. Yeah. But the hedgehog that I didn't design it, I chose it, is already a great idea because nobody knows what it's supposed to look like, so it doesn't matter that it's not completely proof. It's great again, like it's using now. Normally we have no clue in what to make. No, we just make test bars.
Dat is ook in Nederlands vragen. Ik weet niet of ik mijn gedachten beoordeeld krijg, maar ja, ik heb heel dat proces beschreven van hoeveel energie dat er eigenlijk nodig is om tot dat eindproduct te komen. En ik vraag me af van ja, is dat waar? Van in vergelijking met andere productieprocessen om tot de bouwstof van 3D-printing te komen, is dat vergelijkbaar of is dit proces echt veel intensiever eigenlijk? Qua energiegebruik en naar kostprijs toe? Of is dat omdat het nog in de beginfase zit? Of blijft het gewoon een duur proces?
What I show is our ideal process, where we have the long fibers and they're really at their best. What you see is what people are selling for hemp composites, for miscanthus composites. It's a much easier process where they just put it in there and then it's not really a long fiber, it's just a particle, but then you can also do it with dust, more or less. So we did this because we want to show it's possible to have the optimal product. We can do it a lot cheaper by just throwing it together, mixing it a little bit and make it same. But then it's not as strong. But the problem is, how strong should a hedgehog be? You have no clue what you actually, as a material, need for these kind of purposes. So that depends on what you're going to do. Yeah, I think it would be possible, just like miscanthus and hemp, would be possible. The problem is that I want to destroy it. And in my nice extruder and in my compounding, I'm heating up so much that it will never grow back. if I would put it in my house and some part would actually start growing again, then I have a big problem. So in selecting, we selected a process that was also at high temperature, so it would be destroyed.
Thank you so much, Edwin. It was a good talk. I would love to invite our visitors from Slovenia to the stage. It's Krater, which is an eco-social production space. And they came all the way from Slovenia, so extra big applause for them. There will be a really nice surprise afterwards.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you, Willem, for having us. It's a really nice setting here. We're very happy to speak. We are Gaia, Seba, and Danica. We are coming from a Krater collective. This is an abandoned, almost abandoned, not anymore, a construction site in Ljubljana. Gaia is the founder of Trajna and eco-social designer. Seba is the chief chef, and ecologist. And I'm architect and a curator. What you see on the image is Krater. It's actually a unique place in Ljubljana, capital of Slovenia, where our design and architecture practices are situated. Krater was primarily set to question how we, as a collective of permaculturists, ecologists, and architects, could inhabit a degraded urban site and use our material practices to engage in the process of site regeneration. It started as an idea of a mobile production laboratory situated in the abandoned 1,800 meters squared construction site near the city center. The site called our attention for its pioneering and highly biodiverse urban ecosystem, full of invasive and other feral plants. So actually this lecture will put Japanese knotweed in a feral perspective.
Thank you, Danica, for a lovely introduction. And now we will go back a little bit at our beginnings. So Krater emerged from the project Symposium. This is a Trajna's 5-year project working towards rethinking the management of invasive species in urban ecosystems mostly. We raised interest in invasive species since the current paradigm is oriented in prioritizing their forceful eradication. It, however, fails to recognize that their deliberate removal would prevent these vital species to successfully repair damaged ecosystems caused by mass urbanization, deforestation, and global trade. So if we wanted to move from extractive economies to fostering healthy ecosystems, we needed to invent new practices of care for the urban landscapes from which we took the gifts of nature. So instead of working towards their eradication, we invited people to recognize the opportunities invasive species bring to the local communities and ecologies. By taking them as companion species of the Anthropocene, we could better understand how and with whom we want to collaborate if we want to build a diverse web of life in our damaged ecosystems. So here is the first practical project we would like to speak about. It happened really, I think, more than 5 years ago that we started with this practice. It's called the Laboratory of Extended Living, and it is a project that explores how to extend the life of invasive species by experimenting with their diverse applications. The name and approach was inspired by the belief from the indigenous peoples from Japan, who thought that trees which were chopped down and used for making objects to support survival of the local inhabitants were given a new life. So we used the opportunity to mobilize the municipal public funding. It was because we started as a cultural organization. It was difficult. We didn't have the terrain basically to operate on the ecological themes, and this funding gave us an opportunity as a cultural organization nevertheless to apply. So we mobilized this public fund that was dedicated mainly to facilitate eradication of invasives for collective experimentation with alternative management strategies instead. Together with invited biologists, designers, craftsmen, and the local community, we harvested the vital perennials, integrated greens in Ljubljana. That was mostly in Natura 2000 areas, and engaged in reading sessions and experiment with various processes of their use. This was the book that we extensively used, called Beyond the War in Invasive Species by Tao Orion, and was a great inspiration for us to kind of gain a wider perspective on invasives. Highly recommended read. So among others, we use the shredded biomass of Japanese knotweed as a substrate to grow edible mushrooms, fresh leaves and stems as a base to make an organic fertilizer, and experimented with using knotweed fibres to create paper. And these were like micro experiments we did together with the local community, but it was really important that we would practically engage with experimentation of this biomass. And for us it was then really fortunate that some of the experiments we could take further, and that opened up new opportunities for our collective. So the paper that we researched within these experiments, the opportunity to make paper out of the knotweed fibers was something that we took further, and now we are kind of happy that we are practicing and are engaging with the Knotweed paper brand, which is a small business of paper of Japanese knotweed. I'll just shortly introduce now. So instead of using the imported cellulose produced in the tree plantations, with knotweed paper we harvest the dry knotweed stems as an alternative source of cellulose. We normally harvest somewhere around April. And for us it's really important to gather the dry stems because they contain kind of the most amount of fibers, and then we don't have to deal with the leaves, which are not so good for the paper industry. But apart from that, it's also a really good opportunity that we gather together with friends and colleagues and supporters and kind of engage in this collective harvest in the early spring, also when the young knotweed shoots are popping up. So we started to make this traditional burek kind of a dish that we celebrate around the harvesting time, and we will also offer you today. So we were lucky enough that there is a small paper factory 2 kilometers away from our harvesting site. So when we shred the biomass, then we take it directly to the paper factory, to the nearby paper mill, and there they take it forward. So for us it's really important to notice that all the wood pulp in Slovenia is exclusively imported, so there is no pulp production in Slovenia, and kind of this process also sprouted or sparked the industry to think of trying to the cellulose, the knotweed cellulose is the only cellulose that has been and is produced locally at the moment, and this is kind of an important thing for us. And the other important thing is that because we work with old instruments, the paper we produce always varies in shade and quality, and this disturbs the logic of efficiency and standardization and gives space for diversity, experimentation, and surprise. And the paper really asks us to look for partners such as printers and designers who recognize such deviations as an advantage and that are eager to experiment with the potentials of the material. So it's always a little bit of a surprise what we get at the end of the production cycle. And paper and its story and its unique characteristics have become a tool for creating new alliances in Slovenia and abroad. We have collaborated with cultural institutions, artists, designers who use the paper as a communication tool for presenting their ecologically driven projects or practices. And with one of our dear customers, an artist and herbalist, Elisa Denise from Eclipta Herbal, we launched a series of online talks called Invasive Species Creative Proposal Series, a collective platform to share the values and working approaches of artists, herbalists, and ecologists regarding holistic understanding and interaction with novel ecosystems. This is a video series that is also available at our website, krater.si, online, so you can check if you're further interested in the artists that were speaking about their approaches. And here I pass the mic.
Thank you. So the next bigger project of China was Applause project. It was about the circular economies with invasive plants. It was a project in the base of municipality of Ljubljana, and its main goal was to find the potential of invasive plant biomass. So there was a lot of different collaborators, different faculties of University of Ljubljana, also the waste management company. There was also China, and yeah. So the goal was to create these circular economies. The output of this project was that we mapped all the invasive species in the city of Ljubljana. We also developed a set of paper and wood products. We did some natural dyes. We also did educational program, and yes. So there were three main principles of this project. The first one was the hand it over principle that introduced invasive plants collection center, so people in around city could just harvest the invasive plant biomass and bring it to the collection center, and there was like used for the products. The next principle was do-it-yourself principle, which most addressed landowners, especially private ones, since still there's a lot of people not knowing the invasive plants and how to deal with them. So it was really educational. There was a lot of private events, also the knowledge how to deal with invasive plants, how to pick them, how to carefully take them to the collection centers. There was also 20 wood products and 6 paper products made, and also a do-it-yourself catalog that people could just grab it and use the knowledge of it. And the third principle was let's do it together, which was primarily made for children. So there was a lot of workshops for children, educating them about invasive plants and how to use them. They were making paper out of it. And it was really good because we covered almost every school in Ljubljana with this project.
So Sebastian, I think like Applause. Is it working? Okay. Applause for us was really interesting because it was an initiative like on a city level scale. So this was something that we thought was really amazing, that the city recognized the opportunity to think about invasives in a different way and engage in this collective journey together with us and other partners. And as Sebastian mentioned, we were with Trina also working on a collection of design products, let's say, paper and wood products. And here on the image you can see 2 of the products that we proposed. And we didn't really want to engage with the product just to be like practical objects, but we want them to kind of become didactic tools that would motivate people to engage in ecological lifestyles and raise awareness about the complexity of the issue around invasive species. So the first paper planting pots encouraged local companies to ban the use of plastic pots, but we also designed a DIY machine, like a hand press that people could use and make the plants pots by themselves. And the paper mobile that you can see on the other side served as a storytelling object to raise awareness how mass tourism and global trade that depend on modern means of transportation contribute to the population of invasive species spread. And one product that we wanted to look a bit more deeply inside is called the Collection of Traveling Plants. It's again a didactic tool that traces the ethnobotanical histories of invasive plants. It acts as a visual reminder of long histories of violence against nature. Herbaria, it comes in a form of herbaria, and herbaria were widely used by the botanists and explorers during the period of colonization to collect exotic species from the conquered lands and introduce them to Europe. And many of those exotic species, popularized of their aesthetic or usefulness, are now considered to be alien invasive species. And just to give you an example, a black locust tree, I think it's also present in the Netherlands, hopefully. It's widely spread in Slovenia, was brought from the French conquest in North America as an ornamental plant to the court in Paris. From its status as a royal trophy, it quickly shifted to the service of public parks decoration, enhancing the living experience of industrial cities across Europe. During the Industrial Revolution, its hardy wood became the new building material of human infrastructures, especially railroads and bridges. And today it spontaneously grows alongside railroads and roads, abandoned pastures and meadows, construction sites, and its quick and uncontrolled expansion transforms the status of the plant from a valuable resource to a dangerous pest. And without a serious scientific assessment of their ecological functions in disturbed ecologies, the plant experiences a new level of oppression, this time through warlike approaches shaped around invasive species. So these stories about the plants are really trying to kind of showcase this like very problematic, I think, gestures that were unfolding around these particular plants. So with Herbaria, the artwork allowed us to organize a series of field trips in degraded sites across Europe and reflecting on historical narratives of invasive plants, encourage the participants to reevaluate urban wastelands from their political and ecological perspectives and co-create graphic plant assemblages, and on the Herbaria you are invited to put the leaves on the plants within the storyline illustration. And maybe just to conclude with this project, it was really amazing that we could be part of this super huge city-led initiative. However, there we found certain differences between our fundamental perspectives towards natural ecosystems and the perspectives that the city and maybe local biologists held. So we thought that their solution-driven, warlike approach towards invasive species reflected in a construction of this heroic narrative in which good wins the evil. So out of the dangerous invasive weeds, we will make a new circular economy, new products for the people, and we will be good and awarded for that, I don't know. And such dichotomies are dangerous as they tend to simplify the complexities of the invasive species problematic, and they can even sometimes recreate the very problem that they are trying to solve. If the sites where we gather the biomass are treated only from the perspective of extraction, so if we only gather the material, they kind of create conditions for further spread of invasive species, or at least they don't help with constraining them. So this is why when we kind of finished the project, we really felt the urge to continue our kind of more critical practice around invasives. And our idea from the beginning on was not to produce yet another sustainable brand or to eradicate the unwanted plants considered as pests. Instead of aligning with the warlike approaches focused on invasive species eradication, we wanted to create a more than academic discourse which would redefine ways we inhabit disturbed, damaged ecosystems. And taking the perspective of repair was our priority and not the aftermath of the process of extraction. This idea followed us through our practice and influenced how we still today in Krater take part in regenerative material cultures, working with the plants mycelia, wild clay, acre waste, scrap wood, and so on. So these are a few of the examples, and now we're moving to the Krater. And this is a drone picture, so you get a little bit of a better perspective of how the site looks like.
So actually, due to the lack of production spaces in the city of Ljubljana and our wish to continue our experimental work, we wanted to inhabit a degraded site where we could set up our school, a production unit, and learn how to continuously work with the abandoned ecosystems. In 2020, we have signed a contract with the Ministry of Justice, who is currently managing the plot. This is actually a rewilded urban ground, fenced and forgotten for 28 years, now planned to be replaced entirely with the Palace of Justice. Since its opening in June 2021, Krater has facilitated 25 creative workshops, a film festival, 10 surplus exchange events, and hosted more than 300 school kids. The site sparked up the production of 14 additional projects successfully financed by the EU and municipal funds. Projects which hosted internationally recognized designers, architects, and herbalists, introduced Krater as an interdisciplinary learning environment for eco-social designers and makers in Slovenia and across. And its functioning, relies mostly on our voluntary engagement. The importance of Krater's work has been recently recognized, finally, by respective EU institutions. Krater was selected as one of the finalists of the New European Bauhaus Prize and shortlisted for European awards for public space. Last month, it won the highest national award in the category of the public space, even though the administrative documents still categorize it as a pending construction site. So will you continue?
So to keep this site connected and healthy, we started to invent and engage in actions of slow ecological disturbances, which was inspired by Anna Zink. We installed different bird nests, we planted drought-resistant plants, we also trying to improve the soil in that site. We also started with seed library. So in that place we have also a papermaking workshop and wood workshop and clay workshop where we design different products. We also host a refuge for abandoned plants and sanctuary for golden fishes. So those are the things. Slide. Yeah, we also have this kids school for urban ecology. Really good collaborating with local schools. And the goal of this education is that we need to prepare children for living in the city in the future, because there are so many different things happening, like rising temperatures, soil destruction, biodiversity loss. And we try to give them a tools how to engage with the urban nature and how they can find a solution that will keep us and have a good life in the cities. So, yeah.
So, and now sad news that I already stated before, all that you've just seen is actually planned to extinct because the whole area will be cut down and replaced by the development of the Palace of Justice. When the architectural competition was on, it was a national competition, and in the competition brief, the area was given as a complete tabula rasa, so like nothing is here. And then it was again our self-initiative to find out about this invisibility and what creates it. And then we run into different layers of invisibility, and one certainly is forced by press and how it is covered for years, like vacant state-owned land causing damage, or that neighborhoods were delighted by a tractor and an excavator, which were cleaning overgrown vegetation. What it has in common with Japanese Knotweed, we think it's producing, or like how we produce this discourse about feral and uncontrolled in public. So the other level of invisibility is if you are looking at the Google Maps, so the whole area is like in this red circle of Krater and other greens. There is no green. So in Google Maps default view, this is a buildable area. So we actually started thinking, okay, maybe we should investigate what Google Maps recognize as green at all. And then, yes, you can see here the difference. This is Krater, like top-down view, and we listed more than 200 species there, and ever-developing ecosystem. So this is the Palace of Justice. So actually, we spoke with Deborah. She was a mentor in our program, and once I asked you, yes, but how we will claim like the green space of Krater? Why this one is better than the one shown at their renders? Deborah said, but this is all monoculture, you know, and it can never replace like the 30 years of this ecosystem working in itself and establishing relations. So without operational policies or legal advocacy tools considering such sites of great value, Krater's multi-species community is meant to be extincted. And also the parallel Palace of Justice is going 3 stories into the ground, which means that whole like soil will be removed. So this is, of course, this is not like the sole example. Krater is not a unique case. It's a recognizable practice of reproducing urban life by cleaning up unsightly mess. So you can see here on the left side, the feral typologies in the city, which were mostly pending construction sites for many, many years. And then now they are cleaned and corrected, urbanized. And you can see the first picture is the city gallery. The second one is like large housing, luxury housing, and the last one is one big office, sports, and parking complex. Our reaction to this was that we actually, when the architectural competition, official competition concluded, we just did another one. And we actually played a bit with the question. We asked not what is the Palace of Justice, but what would be the Palace of Multi-Species Justice. So we opened it up for, it was an international competition, but firstly we wanted to introduce the other context of how do we see this location, and we did this with the help of our Netherlands friends, Klaas Koitenbrouwer from Ketno Institute, who introduced like the legal structure of how do we see how can we see these lands, and Deborah with her multi-species urbanism and public space, they were acting also as mentors of the program. So it was like really wide international community working on the question. Yeah, we have like participants from nine countries. So the main was that at the end of the program, we don't have just one picture of the future of the Krater site, which is this Palace of Justice, but like 7, 9, 10 other possible futures for this, which of course include multi-species community which lives on the site. For example, one proposal dealt exclusively with the soil ecosystem. It was a group of 2 landscape architects also coming from Amsterdam. They recognized they spoke about the urban soil as an ever-evolving living organism which has been built itself for thousands of years. And as the new construction works would destroy the underground life, they focus on its rights and analyze 3 potential scenarios for the future of the soil. The one would be human-centered, the other would be soil-centered, and the third one is how we can be both soil and human-centered. And also what they developed is if we are building such a huge, enormously large construction sites, and where do we go with this soil, and in how small these piles should be in order to preserve the vegetation, the life, for if you transport it on the other side. In Slovenia, we don't have like this fine management of construction sites at all. We don't have like this thinking embedded into the logic. So we arrived at the end. These were only a few of our projects. But maybe to conclude that Krater is an abandoned territory, was an abandoned territory, but it's also an open space exactly for this. Open to all species occupations, expanding the boundaries of the public, establishing new and interspecies alliances. Therefore, in a sense, it's not surprising that in this space, which is neither a park nor a garden, neither an institution nor a construction site, works a generation pushed into individual precariat. A generation which, if it wants to work, must create not only the object of their own practice, but also the conditions and formats for working. Solid infrastructure for creative practice that breaks through power relations of human-centered educational and cultural institutions of the design practice. But not only design, also science practice, actually. While the conventional design practices are often more product-oriented and they are capable of reacting in urgency, the action of becoming feral, running away from established operational frameworks to the unpredictable ones, lets Krater community to seek for modes of working where individualized precarity is softened by multi-species alliances. And yes, this, do you want to speak about it? Okay.
Just to conclude, we think that looking into the future, the urban landscapes will become homes of new ecosystems, most likely represented by species that are currently considered as invasive. Their intensive and deliberate removal could prevent these species from developing into successful ones that are resistant to the unstable living conditions that we are creating. Instead of working towards their eradication, we use them as practical and theoretical research tools for questioning how and with whom to collaborate, to build a diverse web of life and exchange in our future ecosystems. And while the mainstream ecologists up to today, most of them at least that we've met haven't, but not all of them, haven't responded to the biased approaches towards invasive plants currently at play, many local communities, cooks, artists, designers, permaculturists, and anthropologists around the world propose alternative relational strategies, from collecting the plants, for making paper and medicine, to shaping new nature-culture discourses and reviving traditional craftsmanship. Invasive plants are a great example of the unexpected pathways and opportunities that emerge within the era of the Anthropocene. They also suggest that in order to create livable worlds, in such uncertain times, we need to work together across disciplines, classes, nations, genders, and species. And here is the confirmation. We can leave this for 5 minutes. And we would like, we are finished, but we would like to invite you to take a few moments and join us at the under the counter station that will be at the end of the bar, and we'll be waiting for you with a nice tasty snack, and all the instructions will follow, so just follow us. Thank you.
Are there questions for the Anyone with questions?
I have a question. You chose to take the dry stalks as raw material for your paper production, and I understand that some of the proteins, etc., will have been gone after the winter, so you will left with cellulose. In the Netherlands, we use grass as a resource for paper, and we process it in all kinds of ways, but also fresh. And one of the nice things about processing it fresh is that it's easier to separate fibers from the rest. So did you try to do it with a green plant and then mill it a little bit or move it a little bit, and then you get the fibers out of there? And then the nutrients that are in the juice could be also left in the field and grow again.
We tried when we were making the handmade paper, but with the factory, we never tried, because it's more difficult to shred the biomass. We have to pull away the leaves and the stems, so it's a bit more difficult process to get the fibers, it seems, like from the harvesting perspective. So in the end, we decided just to work on wood revolves and woodwork. But it's definitely something probably worth exploring.
The company that's making egg boxes in the Netherlands, that they use grass in their egg boxes, they're using it rather fresh.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting to have also a look there how they do that.
Thank you.
Well, we have tweaked as well with the same idea, and then you will have also much less digging, so it will more be paper than cardboard.
Yeah. So you mean like it will be more of a refined?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
There is more detail and beautiful, so it's
yeah. I mean, we did try to pick them up in November, and that worked well as well. So before winter, let's say, maybe the fibers are a bit better still. No?
No, it depends. You have some more components in there, so it's a different fiber.
Yeah.
And also green. So that may give you a different color in the paper. For some time it will get destroyed because the chlorophyll will go away.
How you see the future of your collective?
It's like how you see the people on the planet at this moment. But what we're trying to do is that we're engaging in few in applications for European tenders, so that would probably allow us to kind of think and plan our continuous practice in the future and would make us a bit more resilient, because now we're like highly precarious due to the fact that we don't have like a structural funding behind us. What is good news is that we have spoken with the Ministry of Justice, and they would probably allow us to stay on the site for another 3 years, because the new palace, due to the political issues, is going to be postponed. The building is going to be postponed a bit, as it seems now. So we'll have a few more years to work on the site, most probably for sure. But I think, it's a really organic practice of shaping up along the way. And now, but I think now that we've built up a really strong, collective discourse and also visibility, that it's easier for us to operate. But nevertheless, somehow, so the media makes us look very amazing and successful, let's say successful. But the behind the story is that we have a lot of struggles to keep on going. But we're very, in this regard, resilient to continue.
Maybe just one thing to add, which I think is important. I don't know how it's in Netherlands, but in Slovenia, if you want to work as an architect, you can work only in the architectural studio, which is a typical studio where you can investor to come to you with a project and then you produce. There is no other way of working. If you want to work otherwise, you need to reimagine the whole structure of how you can engage with the world. And it's, I think, the same with designers, because they go and work in the studio and so in studios. So actually, we need, for our generations and for the way we want to engage our knowledge with the world, we need an invention of the structure of our practice, actually. And it's similar to Sebastian, you're a biologist and ecologist. And there is no way where you can work in such an intersectional practice together. So this is also Krater, and I think it can work on. It's not only for Slovenia; it's much wider issue actually. But the land is extreme. The land of Krater is very near the city center, and it's really valuable land in the sense that you can extract value out of it. So I think it is in a constant danger that it could be sold, or blah blah. The palace is not going to work. So maybe in this sense, our future work is to claim these feral typologies, like the typology of the city, which is the same, equal as the street or as any other typology. So we need to recognize it, and then it cannot be so easily like deleted or overseen.
But is there no support from the citizens to your project, and
there is one.
I think there is a huge supportance of the citizens of the city. Everyone who comes to Krater is really impressed how this is even possible to be here. Also, a lot of people were watching this site because it was closed for almost 30 years, and they were just wondering what is inside, and now they can go inside. So it's really, and also I think we have these really good relationships with schools, with people all around. So there is a lot of potential indeed, and also if people would try to, or municipality would try to close this or build the Palace of Justice, there could be some public initiative that could prevent it, but I don't think we are strong enough in this way right now, but maybe in the next 3 years we could get there. So yeah, we will see, but otherwise I think people are really supporting, not that supporting financially, but otherwise I think it's really great.
I wanted to comment on that question because as an initiative, what happens, you have your core program, but raising public support that would be robust enough to put up a public space fight is another tactful sport. It's its own activity. And constantly having to perform participation is it's a dead end street, first of all, but it's taking you away from yourself and your program, and it forces you to have a larger volunteer base, more management issues. It takes you away from your core values and your core content. You have to be very wary of this as practitioners.
Thank you so much for your lovely presentation. It was very enriching, and thank you to the audience for this. I want to make a quick note about lunch. Lunch is not included in the ticket, so you can go to the restaurant and sit down and order something with the staff. For the speakers, we have lunch. I will be back here at 1. Water is for free. That's a lovely appetizer. Okay, enjoy, and I'll see you back in an hour.
Here are the terms of
Boven.
So for donations, I try to
And it didn't work?
Because it was too small.
You just leave us your email.
Snap jij het?
Van de
Huh? What's happening?
We're sharing the slides, but there are
But how?
terms of it.
But who understands it? Or should it be explained? Or
Yes, we
I'm
are
not sure whether
one
people
by one.
now understand what's going on. Should we make an announcement or something? Because I don't think this is going to work with the group. Maybe you should go to the microphone and explain what you're doing.
Hello. Yeah, maybe we forget to explain how it's working. So there is a burek made out of Japanese knotweed and potato. And because this is a novel food, the Japanese knotweed cannot be sold as a food. So we are doing it under the counter. So it's a little bit, let's say, illegal to sell it. So there is a contract that we deal with you if you want to try the burek. And there is something you can send us in the exchange. So there is trying to create a new economy. So maybe that's the quick explanation. We are there for more information, and also you should try burek. It's really good. Yeah.
It's still warm, so.
It's still warm, yeah.
Can we just grab a piece, or do we have to do something? How does it work?
You need to, like I said, there are contracts where you should read the instructions, and then you can decide what you want what you can offer for an exchange for the burek. And then we will bring you the burek under the counter. So that's how it's working. Any other question?
So we have to fill out the form first?
Yes.
Where can we find the form?
It's over there at the entrance with Guy and Anita. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, super.
And then
Yeah, please.
yeah.
Very nice. So we'll just give you the border here. Oh yeah. Where is the paper with the map?
Oh yeah, I have the paper.
Oh,
I
you
put it in.
Yeah. And we need to make a picture of this. Very important. Yes. You're the first in design it. I'm the first. Wait. This is the first and it's not allowed. This is very official, but it's very illegal. But yesterday there was somebody explaining how you could click here, and they showed the recipe also. Yeah. So we'll just make
Oh yeah, we have to make a picture of the first
with the burek. With the burek. Are you filming?
This is a live stream.
Oh, you're filming.
Yes.
We are waiting for the picture.
No, he's taking
Stamped
pictures.
and signed, so now we have and I can take. No, you need to go to. This is very not obvious.
Not too obvious. So there's nothing here. There's nothing here.
Okay, there you go.
Nothing is there.
Okay, okay.
So,